Hi everyone, it's Jen from Jen's Junk Journal Gems. Today I thought I would talk about incorporating dried leaves, weeds, flowers to whatever creative journal that you're making. Even if you're a scrapbooker, incorporating dried botanicals often adds another element of interest to your project. So I'll show you, this is a nature themed junk journal that I made for myself. If you do want to see the flip through, I have a video on the flip through of this. This was the very first journal that I made. Here what you'll see is it was just a weed growing on my property, and it's pretty. So, you know, there's no rhyme nor reason. It doesn't have to be a perennial or an annual flower in your garden. It could just simply be anything that's of interest as you're walking through a park, or if you're lucky enough like me to have some acreage and all kinds of different wild things growing. It's raised a little bit, so it gives a little bit of interest. You can see how it's raised on the page there. I'll show you another one. These are an annual that I planted, Mysterium, I think they're called. And here is some ferns that I picked on my property, and I added a card that I ordered from Etsy and thought that that would be a neat thing to include. Here's another flower that I've pressed. And the great thing about drawing botanicals is that they retain their color. So even though you think that you know they're dried, that they would lose their color, they actually don't. Here is some cosmos that I have, and you can see again the stamen of the flowers are a little bit raised. What you want to do is you want to cut as close to the underside of the stamen as possible. That is, if you don't want to include the stem or any of the leaves, which I did here. Now, there's a trick. You have to be very careful because you can see the petals, once they're dry, they're just so delicate because they don't have any more moisture in them, and they're just like tissue paper, so you have to be quite careful handling them. But what I do is I glue the stamen down first, and then I gently lift each petal up with my awl, A-W-L, and I put glue underneath. Now here you can see that I've missed a couple of spots where I didn't apply the glue, and so what I'm going to do is apply a little bit of glue at the end of my awl and simply lift up the petal, put it underneath, put your finger over top, and gently just bring it down like that. And once you lift your finger, you'll see that the glue's been applied. So that's a little trick for you. Here I have some Mysterium. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. It's an annual that I planted this year. The leaves are quite unique in the fact that they're round, and so I dried a couple, and when I looked at the leaves after they were dried, I thought, geez, you know, they kind of look like lily pads. So as you can see on this page of my junk journal, I just kind of incorporated a picture of a frog. Here's where I included some dried leaves. I picked these in the fall, so I was guaranteed to have an array of different colors. And what I did here was I glued them down, and I wasn't too particularly fussy on, you know, getting every little bit glued down here, because what I did was I gotta re-glue that down, but I grabbed a piece of filmed plastic. I don't know, it was from maybe a package or something that I had received. If you're a junk journaler, you'll know that you tend to collect things. So anyhow, I had this piece of plastic, and what I did was I just cut it to the size of the page, and I just laid a bead of glue around the perimeter. As you can see, as I said, this is lifted up a little bit, so obviously I didn't put too much glue, or not enough glue. I didn't put any glue inside the paper here. I just wanted to keep that as free as I could. You don't want your piece of plastic glued in some places and not glued in the other. So it's not mandatory that you do this, but I just did it for the sake of interest, you know, just to have that plastic there. So that's another idea that you can do. And two, when you are gluing down your botanicals, you don't want to use too much glue. You don't want it seeping out of the ends. I know sometimes that happens, and obviously you just, you know, wipe it up. But it's very important as well that you use a glue that you know is going to dry clear. You don't want the glue to show if it does seep out, or in between parts where you might have holes in your botanical. You don't want white glue showing. Here I've got another cosmos, and I've included the stem here. And I have my Black-Eyed Susan, and as you can see, it's quite raised from the paper. It doesn't hinder anything at all. It's already dried, so you don't have to worry about the page that lays on top of it ruining it. It's quite hard and quite dry. And I think that's all that I've included in that. Now, the how-to. It's as simple as grabbing a couple of books that you have on hand. Here I've got a couple of different craft books that I have. They don't have to be super thick unless you have a lot of specimens to include. This one is actually rather thin. I've incorporated, I think this is the one where I have my flowers. And I'll just show you, oh no, this is the leaves. I'll just show you some of the things. Now, this is yellowed because I picked it in the fall. And again, it doesn't have to be pretty perennial or annual flowers. This is a weed. I have no idea what it's called, but it's interesting. So I thought I would try that. You want to leave a few pages. Sorry about that. I had to pause the video. I've got 3 dogs. When you live in the country, we don't have a doorbell, and what we have instead are my 2 pugs and my rescue from Egypt, who bark at everything through the front window. Anyhow, what I was saying is you want to leave a few pieces of paper in between where you're drawing. There's another piece of fern from the fall. That's an interesting yellow, and some red leaves. Oh, hopefully he'll settle down. Anyway, it's a great way to preserve, you know, in the summertime here. I mean, I'm in Ontario, Canada, and we have pretty harsh winters, and so nothing grows. So you have to kind of take advantage of the other 3 seasons, the winter, the spring, the summer, and the fall. There's a couple of daisies that I've dried, and another Cosmo. And oh, there's another Black-Eyed Susan. It's as simple as putting it into whatever books that you have available. And then what is important to the drying process is that you put the books that you have your specimens in at the bottom, and you can weight them with other books, or in my case, I have a bin in my closet that is just full of hodgepodge stuff, and I put it on top of the books. Now, the process takes about a month, depending on what you're drying. Anything thin, like leaves and ferns and that, will obviously dry much quicker, but the flowers, especially the stamens, contain a lot of moisture. So you might want to check after about a month and see how your stuff is doing. Now, if you don't press your botanicals, I'll just give you an example here. I've got some leaves that I went around and collected. And when you just dry them on a rack, or, put them on a flat surface to dry, what happens is that it curls, and it makes it extremely difficult to glue down. You want to be able to glue a flat specimen so that there's less chance of anything that's raised to flake off. So that's why pressing botanicals is very important if you're including it into your scrapbooking or your junk journaling. Anyhow, I hope that this video has been helpful. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. I do check my my notifications, and I'll certainly answer anything that any questions that you have. And if you have any ideas for what you'd like to see, or maybe what you're working on, and would like some advice or opinions, please leave it in the comments below. I intend on making some tutorials of the process of making junk journals, so I'm always open to different ideas of especially what beginners would like to know. I know that I haven't been making journals for very long, and it was instrumental for me to research on YouTube how to do different things. So I'd like to try and be as helpful as I can. Anyhow, on that note, if you like what you've seen here, hit like, hit the subscribe button, and I'll talk to you later. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.